scheduled last week, but with the Parks and Rec being such a heavy topic for us, it's good to get as many updates as we possibly can. So basically, I reached out to Matt, asked him if we could get some of these topics, or get all these topics discussed in a timely manner, and Matt obliged, put the meeting on for today. So what the point of the meeting is really to go through and get us updated on the latest, and then provide any feedback that we would like to for the topics. Do we want to, you just want to run through the topics one by one?
Yeah, I'll go.
Start with Tower Park.
Yeah, I'll run through here. And like Jeff said, what we're kind of looking at is just kind of give you a real quick overview, some of the direction that we're thinking, and really just get your feedback to make sure we're on the right path, and then maybe get some priorities from the committee as we move forward. So the first is the Tower Park Playground update. Kevin, do you want to give a quick update on that one?
Yeah, so okay, so a couple things. I spoke with CT yesterday. They are completing their 60% design by the end of next week, so that it can be sent to Prue's Construction for cost estimates. They're going to give us cost estimates by the end of May. Frank will meet with us at the end of May in advance, staff, just to go over everything. But those cost estimates are projected by the end of May at 60%. And I guess that was the direction that we provided them. I think Bruce can still bid on the project. If you go over 60%, then you can't bid on the project. So I think that's their
60% on what?
60% of the 60% of the cost estimates, like breaking everything down precisely. They're going to give us, it's going to get a precise number to 60%, and then the rest is kind of, okay, this is about what we're going to be. They're not doing a line item budget for the entire 100% of the project.
Understood, okay. So the 40% could be changes or...
Slight modifications, it could be, but they're going to give us a good number based on the rest of that, getting us to that point. There was some discussion, Matt, I didn't know if you wanted to go into it as far as the sprinkler area.
Yeah, before we do, just I want to make sure that expectations here from the committee are clear. You know, the picture up here is what we've designed, but that's not necessarily going to be the end game, right? Because when people bid on it, some may not be able to do certain things, some may replace it and have reasons why, you know, this feature is better or things like that. So we've given them an idea of what we're looking for, but the actual end game will be a little bit different depending on which bid we choose, just so kind of everybody understands. Because I think when citizens look at this, they think, well, this is what it's going to look like. Well, we're wanting it to look like this, but there may be some variations. Still keeping the same, you know, age groups on these different things and the inclusion and everything else, but just visually there might be some changes, and that'll be stuff that'll be decided when the bids come back in from different companies. So I wanted to set that expectation.
When we get the bids, will they be broken down by like unit? So broken down by the play area on the left, the sprinkler area, the swings. Will we have all that?
Most likely they'll be able to be broken down, and then we can make some modifications if necessary after that. So the one thing I do want to discuss for today is, you know, it has been brought up the last couple weeks about the splash feature here at Tower Park, and how having that at Tower Park does kind of make the whole park a wet park during some days, you know, obviously in the spring and summer. And is that something that we want to consider taking out of the design, adding more park with it, and then focus more on seeing if we can do some splash features somewhere else, like Highland Park or something like that? So that's kind of some feedback I want to get from the committee. You know, from the staff's point of it, we're good with removing that and kind of expanding the park a little bit, and then kind of focusing on having that as a separate feature, because we do get the understanding that there will be transfer of that. And I talked to Chris Manning, who agrees that that can be an issue. You know, we do have it sectioned off, but those of us that have kids know that we're not going to be able to keep wet kids from taking a break from the splash and going to slide and then coming back. Just like you're going to have kids that their parents are trying to keep them dry and not dirty because they have something else going on and don't necessarily want their clothes all wet from playing in the park either. So I think it's a valid point that was brought up. It's something I didn't think about during this, so I just kind of wanted to get
The feedback that I received when this initial rendering went out about having that there was very mixed. And then last night was the first time it actually came to like a public comment on it. So it did confirm a lot of the feedback that I received. Some people were indecisive if they like it there because it's so small, but then at the same time, it was well, that's gonna create a mess at the other parts of the park. So I'm okay. I'd actually prefer to look for other locations for it.
And it will be a I mean, I would think it'd be somewhat of a savings. It's definitely easier construction-wise without having to run water and everything. So I think there's enough positives to consider taking it out.
That area where it is so heavily used when we have events for other, like picnic area or other things, just setting up different amenities, temporary amenities. And that whole section there would be, you would be able to use it for that if there was a splash.
And that's one thing we did discuss is the fact that if the shelter is rented, there's very limited places to have a picnic, to have lunch and stuff. So that area can be utilized more for people to still be able to, you know, eat and sit down and have kind of a picnic without having a shelter if it's not available.
Yeah, I think initially we talked about the trees, if we're able to keep both trees or not. And then regardless if we keep both trees or not, if we could make that a turf area to make it more usable throughout the year, and then also provide some type of, it's gonna need some kind of shade. So some kind of shade structure over there, not a
Shelter.
Not a shelter, but like a wind sail or whatever it is.
Yeah, and we can look at that. Obviously, we're gonna try to save as many trees as we can. Those two large trees in the front are ending their life.
Yeah.
They're coming to an end, even though they're large and look healthy. They are getting to that, but I think those are planning to be saved right now.
Mm-hmm.
But we also want to be paying attention that, you know, in the next 5 years, if they do need to come down, what can we kind of expand or change? If it's something that will be good for the next few years or 5 years, we probably want to keep the trees. But we also need to have a plan that when those do need to come down, what are we gonna put there and expand it?
We lost a big piece of one of the trees, what, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and we did our best to say, let's just thin it out the best we can and save it because they are such big iconic trees.
Right.
And I'd say the same thing with this. If there's a way for us to just, you know, keep those trees for a while, and if we eventually have to lose them, then we come in and put the turf and do whatever and just leave it grass for now, leave those trees there, build the rest of it, go as far as we need to do, if we can save the trees. But you know, you'll get different opinions on that. Oh, you get a professional arborist that they can tell you that they haven't. But,
Right.
you know, it's hard to let good, big, tall trees like that, because they provide the shade as well. It's a nice shady area there in the middle of the summer when, you know, people hang out there and when we've got the blow-up things and all that kind of stuff. It's a great area of the park, so.
Didn't you guys discuss that those trees were needed to come down already? That they were at the end of their life, and this was a great time to take them down?
We're gonna have to take that into account. We do know that they're coming to the end of their life. My concern is they are so tall that most people don't pay attention to the branches, and when they do fall, they fall far.
So, wouldn't it be prudent to take them down now when we're doing the park,
That's-
enhancing it?
These are all things that I've heard. So during this plan, we are definitely gonna have them evaluated, and if we're talking in the next couple of years, we need to take them down now. It makes the most sense. We're already disturbing that area and we can clean it up better and possibly expand stuff. So, but I just don't have a good answer right now to say, yes, we're definitely, but if it makes sense, we'll do it now.
I think we all want to keep them, but
Yeah.
it just depends on what the professionals say.
Right.
Especially losing that climbing tree, that
I know.
was unfortunate too.
Luckily, that wasn't the most popular climbing tree. Still have the other one.
Are we able to replace that with The climbing tree, are we gonna replace that with a bigger tree?
Yeah, I mean, we've got, in that, especially that end of the park where we lost that tree, we have a lot of plannings planned for it.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
yeah. And with as much feedback as we have, and those that have kids know, that those are great climbing trees. We're hoping to replicate that. Granted, in the next 5 years it won't, but, you know, in the future,
Yeah.
they'll be good.
I just don't wanna replace it with a smaller one, it's gonna take years and years. If we can spend a little bit more money and get a bigger tree in there, that'd be great.
It just wasn't real clear.
You know, I was on this Parks and Rec committee for 4 years before this, and this issue never came up with a splash pad, you know, crossing over to the playground prior to recently, as it got closer. I know there's been a lot of drive by just a few people that want the splash pad at Highland Park separate, you know, from everything else. And I'm not opposed to a separate area, but no matter where we put a splash pad, we can't eliminate park equipment for kids. It's not possible. So whether it's 50 feet or 150 feet, this area, and the reason I was pushing for this originally, which I'm still getting a lot of great feedback on, only a couple people are concerned about the crossover. And there's gonna be crossover no matter where you go, whatever park we decide to put it in. But we already have a shelter here, we already have plumbing, we already have parking, and we already have multiple bathrooms there. We have the tennis courts, it's our main play area. It would, to me, if we really wanted a splash pad in town at all, this is the most cost-effective and utilized park we have with all the features, and now it's gonna be ADA compliant. You know, I mean, it's gonna have walking paths. You know, you can do them smaller, you can put them only in front there, and if those are two features like Andy or Kevin just pointed out with the tunnel, you can move it farther away. You know, so it doesn't matter where we put it in town, this is gonna be an issue. But to me, this is the most cost-effective way if they wanted it. You know, so, and you can always bid it separately. I think it would probably have to be bid separately. I can't imagine the playground people are the same as the splash park people, but I don't know. But I mean, I was on it for 4 years and never heard one complaint until a few people decided they are insistent that it go in Highland Park. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, we're not taking, oh,
So-
sorry.
Sorry.
Come on up. You need to sit up here.
So when we first talked about this, I was actually the one that said there would be crossover, but, not because I'm a parent that cares about crossover, but just because, if I wasn't, and I took my kid to the park, and we just stopped them there for a second to go, and then my kid's wet, then I would be upset. But, also, when you say taking out equipment to replace it with equipment, there are other places in the park that are in the city that could be discussed to just have a small splash pad, not necessarily a huge, you know, bright, colorful, tons of equipment. But, I think that the people that I've talked to, they just want some sort of something that they can take their kids to for a little bit, get wet, go crazy, and then go home. So I don't think that it's necessarily needed to be next to,
where would we, I'm fine with it, you know. If
We'll talk about some other locations here later in the do that we've
I do,
discussed.
okay, cool, because I do get concerned with Highland Park a little bit too, because the people on Mayfield are already so much about traffic for the baseball field, so if they put it on top, that's gonna be a problem. But there are other areas I'm more apt to, I just knew this was a cost-effective area to kind of fit both places.
Yeah, no,
That's
I
the
get it.
feeling. That's the-
Okay.
So what does the committee think? Do we want to wait for the bids to come in and see what the cost is? Do we want to examine, obviously we're gonna be examining other options as we go along for a smaller version of a splash pad. But what are your thoughts on location?
I would say, wait for the numbers to come in just to see what they're probably already well on their way to coming up with a number, aren't they?
So the splash feature alone, I think if we break it out, it's between 200 and 300,000 is what we have discussed.
And that's an actual dollar amount?
That was the estimate that we discussed a few months ago when we were pricing this out.
Which would be roughly 10% of the total, rough 10% of the total whole thing.
Well, that's
So does that come down a little bit? This says 300, 350.
Is that what I'm just going off memory. I
Turn the
apologize.
mics
But
on,
yeah,
please. Turn the
if
mics
that's,
on. You guys are not hearing me, thank you.
Yeah, so there's an estimate here that says 300 to 350 for the spray ground attached to the
tower.
tower.
Okay.
So right now, you know, I'm not opposed to removing it from there and looking somewhere else, but for right now, just to, you know, do we have to remove it right now?
No,
Because it
No.
doesn't change.
no.
Now, and we can probably ask for 2 bids, it just makes it a little more complicated. That's
Well, if they line item it, they could just do one bid and just line item it.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on if you're replacing it with some equipment or are you just
Correct.
leaving it a green space.
Right.
Could they line item, could they do 2 different designs? Again, I mean, what Matt was saying earlier, this is just a rendering, just an
Yeah, I don't think
idea.
we'll have to do a separate design for it, but I think we can probably write into the bid, and I'll talk to Frank if we can just have them have an option without it
Yeah.
and price it out like that and just
One-
make it more of a
One problem
public
with
area.
that I've seen in construction with contractors is the old dollar in, dime out. You know, which it's really expensive, but if you remove, you know, it's gonna cost you $1. But if you remove it, we'll take 10 cents off the bill. So, you know, I don't know if it'd be smarter to, if they know that their line item, well, then we know that they're taking that out. And obviously, there'd be plenty of money for, you know, if it's $300,000, there's gonna be plenty of money to replace some turf
Well, I
and
think,
what's been approved.
I think Adam said it earlier, is that it'll probably be 2 different organizations that do the splash area versus.
I would assume, I'm.
Yeah, I would assume that,
That's correct.
I would assume that the general contractor that would do it would just have a subcontractor that would do that little portion of it.
So we would know.
They can still do the construction, they can still do the plumbing and everything, but have another company come in and do the actual layout.
So we would know actual cost that if we wanted to not
Yeah.
include it.
Okay, that's good information for us. We'll go ahead and talk to CT and tell them we just want the option that not to be there, but to include it anyway.
Yeah,
Okay,
Unless by the end of the discussion today, maybe we come up with something else.
yeah.
right.
The only caveat might be, and I'd have to talk to Frank more specifically, the extent of the design that they're going to be putting into over the next month. So if they're putting in $10,000 in design, do we want to pull back a little bit and not spend the money on the design? I don't know exactly precisely where how far they're getting on the design aspect of the plumbing, you know, et cetera, associated with that.
So, but I think I've got enough feedback from the committee to take that back to Frank, and then whatever, if it's something other than what we've talked about, I'll just reach out and let you know.
Kevin, that's kind of what I was getting at. If they're already done with it, if they haven't even started on it, well, now's the time to say, stop.
Okay,
Yeah. I would do
understood.
that.
Yep, we can do that. Any other questions about Tower Park?
Well, you mentioned different locations, but maybe it'll come up, when you discuss other locations, but I'm wondering, have we considered other locations within Tower Park? Are there any possibilities
No.
there?
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of, with everything we have going on here, I would recommend against it at this point. But I'm not opposed to anything, but you know, I think Tower Park has so many amenities, I don't want to keep adding more.
Soccer field's getting redone there too.
But, and so in the future, it's a possibility to do something smaller, but I also don't want it to be a park that's so crammed.
Yeah,
Would be my fear.
they're kind of sectioned off to amenity currently too. Just throwing it in there, just to throw it in there might not be the best idea.
But we'll definitely take a look at all of them on that. All right, let's do a quick Riverside Park update, Kevin.
Yeah, so next Wednesday, the basketball goal is going to be going up. Next week, we are beginning electric. We're coming from behind one of the houses. We got all the agreements kind of in place and got Duke on board and spoke with all the homeowners and are where we're going to need to be. So the electric is going to begin next week, but with inspections and hooking up electric, getting the boxes in place, is going to take a few weeks to complete that, weather dependent. Then the last 2 elements are the coating over the asphalt. So we've reached out to the same folks that coated our tennis courts, and this is such a small project for them that they're going to kind of fit it in with another project in the area. So I don't have a definite timeline, but you know, it's sometime probably over the next month and a half that they're going to fit that in with another project in the area. Lastly is the pavers that are going to be engraved. Those engravings, one of the residents has kind of gathered all of the, what the folks want on the plaques, or on the, I should say, on the stones. And once he gets that to me, we're gonna go pull those, put some bricks in there temporary. We were gonna get a different type of stone, but they're very limited for that size, the 8x8, the size and scope of the actual surface. So we're gonna get those engraved. Unfortunately, I don't know how long it takes Rolf Monument to engrave 30 stones, but we'll have something there that can certainly be utilized until those stones get done.
I'd like to just take a moment and thank, I live on Riverside Parkway, and this is, it's a great addition to the whole street, and I'd like to thank Adam for really getting this going, and the crews of the city, because I'm driving by there twice a day. They've done a great job. They've kept everything clean. I'm very impressed.
I'd like to thank you for that. Corey came up and spoke, and I think this is a really cool project. Matt has really taken the reins on this. He really deserves a lot of the credit for getting general service and getting this done. But this little park, we have such great pocket neighborhoods in here with such great parks, and they reached out to me about a new basketball court, and I think Brad Younger, Roger's son, wanted to donate the product to it. And then the next thing I know is I'm standing there meeting with them just to help them out, to communicate with the city. Amy Schaefer drives by, and then comes over. Next thing I know, this whole community had meetings. Ron Dill came by, and they really rallied. They raised over $60,000 themselves to invest in this park. I donated myself. I grew up back there, so I wanted a plaque for my dad back there. And I just think this is one of those best projects I've ever been a part of, because when you combine the city and the community, that's what it's all about. It's a very, very, very cool project, and it's well utilized back there. So we have a lot of great parks. I can't believe how many little parks we have in the area. So it's pretty cool.
Yep, so we're coming in on the final stretch on that. Just wanted to give everybody an update.
And it looks great.
Public
Yeah,
Works has done an amazing job at getting that done, so. All right, for the next item is the city plan for pickleball courts. So we do have, right now, the short term, we've got the lower tennis courts that we have, I guess, kind of a decision to make from the committee is we can stripe them for multi-use, which is around $3,000 is our estimate, or we can repurpose that lower court and just do pickleball, which is about $15,000, is what our estimates are right now. So the question is, for staff, and we're kind of mixed, the high school definitely doesn't want to lose the tennis court, since that's their, Highlands tennis team utilizes this. The majority of the lower court is for their tournaments, so it's not so much, after speaking with them, it's not so much week to week, because they generally utilize the top 4 for practice, but for the tournaments, they definitely use the lower end. So that's one consideration if we take out the tennis courts on the lower end. Additionally, there are a lot of people that like to use, who maybe aren't as good at tennis, from myself and just other people talking, they like to be on that court, one, so they don't have to chase the ball as far, and they don't look like idiots in front of other people. So just some considerations there of keeping multi-use. I've talked to a handful in the last 2 weeks, just by chance, of one person was from Ohio, and he was a huge pickleball person. I asked his opinion while he was up at Tower Park, and his recommendation was not to take the tennis courts out and leave them, because he's like, no, doing the multi-use gives you that flexibility, and it's something that, pickleballers are used to and they like, or they're fine with. So that was just one opinion. We actually talked to the middle school that came in and did a presentation last week, and a lot of them pickleball, and they said the same thing. No one there said to make it dedicated. So I know there's opinions back and forth, so just kind of wanted to see what your thoughts are. Now, we obviously have pickleball courts planned for Carlisle Park in the future, but obviously that's in the future. We're looking, I'm thinking, 3 to 5 years out before we can get everything done on that part. And maybe it's quicker, but I like to be a little realistic on things. But we know that that's going to be kind of our final plan. But until then, the question is, what direction should we go in this next budget year for the lower courts.
How many would potentially go there?
6,
6 permanent or 6 temporary?
either one.
Okay, so there's no benefit in doing permanent.
There is. So if we had, because right now, if you line it for 6 courts, for temporary courts, then pickleball people still have to pull out the temporary, nets, and they're still using 2 tennis nets. So if you line it for 6 permanently and spend the $15,000, then all the pickleball people have a permanent home until we either expand the Carlisle Park or, whatever.
Has there been any kind of study on the stability of the Carlisle Park?
We've done that, and obviously that's gonna be a major factor once we get all the, water issues taken care of it. And we're gonna be putting those on the areas that are obviously more, stable than the rest of it. But close, like we have here, close to the road is a stable area, and the areas that aren't, they're gonna be less stable are gonna be more on the edges and
So
the
then,
hill.
that's just, the less stable or the, like I said, just walking trails?
Correct, in the dog park.
The area was.
We still have more work to do. Again, I came on this late, but the priority right now is to get the drainage taken care of, and we're gonna be meeting with the state here in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, they get back to us. But, then we can start kind of progressing on that, and obviously, we're not gonna put them on areas that aren't stable.
I met out there with Ron and with representatives from Newport Sanitation District and the state, and we walked the whole property and went over all of that we had a lot of historical documents that we worked with. And the reality is, the area that shows where the pickleball is, the area that shows where pickleball is, and the parking area and all the roads, that's all very stable. The only area right now, and there was a point that Newport and the sanitation district together just recently fixed, and that's across from the driveway, the L point. In here, there was a big drainage ditch going down, and it was eroding next to this guy's driveway. And they actually piped that entire thing. Chris Manning worked with us, and we were gonna try to do an open tiered thing with rocks and that kind of stuff, and the slope was too great for that to work, so it all had to be piped. That's been completed. The only other area that's a problem is where the parking shows up there is a section, there's a drain coming underneath Memorial from the other side that has no place to go right now. And that's what's causing a lot of the instability. The water's just basically ponding in there and soaking into the ground. So that needs to be piped either to the pipe where Newport just fixed, along Memorial to another crossover that's already in there, or a brand new one put across. Once that's done, then the rest of the hillside can be stable. But where the pickleball courts are shown on this plan, that area hasn't ever moved, because that's very stable there. It's really just over the edge of the hill that stuff has fallen down. That's where the dog park, that kind of thing is slated, so that would not really be a big issue.
What would be the investment to put, what are there, 6 brand new courts anywhere? What, like if here or Highland Park or wherever we decide to put brand new courts, what would be the cost?
I don't have it. Right now.
Cold Spring was, I think it was $350 for 6 courts. We should be working on a bid for Lower Highland Park, right? That was a motion made.
We'll talk about this at the next, and moving forward here.
So that was what, I think Cold Spring was $350 for 6 courts, if I'm not mistaken, that they were putting.
Yeah. And I've got,
Or is that just for surfacing?
I just know that they put a bid out for $300.
yeah, I mean, that's something where we can look at. Again, the plan was Carlisle Park, but I don't want to talk Carlisle Park too much until
Yeah.
we get the drainage done and we can kind of get into actually making some
Well, the
proposals.
reason I asked, well, one more question. So how often are tournaments held there for the?
I would say 3 to 4 times a year. So it's nothing.
Not substantial, but enough to,
It's enough where I've gotten enough feedback from Highlands that they're not thrilled with it. But at the same time, I kind of made the point where it's not going to be an incredible impact either. Like it's going to impact mostly their tournaments.
Not thrilled with striping the upper courts?
What's this now?
Not thrilled with striping the upper courts?
Not thrilled with removing the lower tennis courts completely.
what is that second, were you asking for a second point there, would they be willing to stripe the upper courts?
Yeah, is it from a tennis, I've never played tennis, but from a tennis standpoint, from their standpoint, is there an issue with striping the upper courts and playing on them? Does it, I mean, does it?
I'm sure tournament play for tennis, that would be an issue. I don't think that for tournaments for pickleball, it's not an issue, right? Is that what they have said recently?
Like, when we take over, when pickleball takes over, Tower
Yeah.
Park, we tape the upper courts. So we utilize all 6 courts for pickleball, but it's only temporary for that weekend. So we tape them off, and we let all the tennis people know ahead of time. It's the same for when we got tennis tournaments too.
How does that work? Is it okay for the tournament weekends?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, if we just tape off the, yeah, there's no issue.
We've got to start, in my opinion, we need to figure out where our ultimate landing spot is for pickleball. Because if we're thinking Carlisle, then the obvious choice would be go temporary here and not talk about Highland Park. If we're thinking Highland Park, then we need to not worry about Carlisle and start working on.
Yeah, I'll make the recommendation that Highland Park is not an option, just due to the noise in that lower area. I mean, just dealing with the noise that we've had with the skate park, and then the research I've done recently, which I didn't realize this was such an issue, but the pickleball noise, it is a much louder area. And if you're talking about the end of James, I mean, that is a bowl, which houses are, we don't think about it in the spring and summer, but houses are close there, just like the skate park. I mean, there's a house right there, and you don't realize it in the spring and summer because of the trees. So my concern would be to spend this much money at the end of James for a pickleball court that we're gonna essentially start getting complaints because it's much louder with the balls.
When Wayne offered to donate the property to us, and I had shared the plan that Chris had come up with, that's the one thing he said to me. He says, pickleball, it's pretty noisy, you may not want to do that. Well, part of the plan was that berm area, to create a berm along Memorial Parkway there, to hopefully reflect the sound up. And, you know, the only person that lives above there is, well, me. And we sleep with a fan, so hopefully the neighbors will be okay with that. Yes, it is quite noisy. But hopefully with the berm, that'll deflect the noise and won't be as bad, and it only goes till dusk anyway, so.
And I know part of the communication that happened with one of the homeowners to acquire the land to fill in down there was noise oriented also.
But at Highland Park, a couple things. Carlisle Park I think it's great. I think you gotta be a lot concerned with traffic coming in and out of there because it's a busy road. Memorial is slipping all the time, all over. So we have problems with our tennis courts up here. So I'm not saying I would be opposed to them there. I just think that earth it's terrible fill. That's why he used it. I mean, if you walk it, it's Mars or the moon, you know what I mean? So to invest that much money, and I would put gravel driveway in there, not even asphalt, because of the way it moves. You know, I think the dog park is fantastic in there. I would just be hesitant to put anything that was a solid surface on the ground. I mean, we'd have to do what they did behind Kroger's on that wall. You're talking millions of dollars probably to stabilize it.
That's incorrect. As I said, we just went with the state and with sanitation, with the engineers, and basically, the majority of that hill is stable. It's only because of the drain issues that's creating a problem. Once that's solved, the hill is stable. The side hill may slip a little bit still, depending on whether we bother to correct it or not, and the reality is we probably don't need to do much to it, just dress it up a little bit, and if that part slips, that's fine. But the basic section in there is nice and stable.
Yeah, and once we get to Carlisle, we're obviously gonna, before we spend money on that, we're gonna get some borings if they haven't done it and things like that. So I'm not concerned about that.
And in Highland Park, we have basketball courts, we've had volleyball courts. The swim club, you can hear it from Highland Avenue all day long as you're driving by, which is the same hours as pickleball would be played. You know what I mean? So as far as the noise goes, and then if you just make it practice fields, kids running down there screaming all day long as they're chasing balls, along with that, I think the noise to me
It's a different, kids playing soccer is a different noise than hearing the book every 2 seconds. But again, it's whatever council gives us direction, we'll do. If they want us to put it on Highland Park, but I am the one that gets the complaints on noise.
So is there an opportunity to expand here, or is it
No.
too hilly?
It's two, yeah, we've looked at, where the practice area is you can't fit them in but we won't be able
Will
to
be,
increase it.
available to build on.
I don't know. I mean, I've got to get the drainage
Yeah,
issue.
that's all, that's all,
So
I'm-
all I'm doing is guessing at this point.
I guess
The only way to add more to this court is if we build a humongous wall on the lower level and fill it in to make it all level, which is a lot more.
And then you don't know how stable that's gonna be
Right,
as well.
so
too.
I think we've maxed this out here.
We did engineer a plan to add a pickleball court where the practice wall is here. And when we got it far enough along, the staff, city staff was going to build a small retaining wall at one end in order to put it in there. We got costing on it, and we stopped after Wayne offered to donate his property because we figured it was gonna make more sense to put the money into there instead of doing it here.
I guess the other question to consider is how many courts do we want and need? If we, whatever we do with Tower Park, whether we stripe for 6 courts or eliminate the tennis or keep the tennis on the lower courts, do we need more than 6 courts? I mean, how many pickleball resources do we need or should we have? I don't know the answer to that, but, you know, we're talking about Highland Park, Carlo Park here. If we put them here and stripe it for here, is that adequate? I mean, 6 courts is a lot of courts. Maybe that's enough. I don't know, but
Well, I think it depends on, I mean, Katie, how many, during a tournament, how many pickleball
So when we
teams do we have?
started pickleball tournament, we had 48 players in the lower 6 courts that we had to line. Last year for Labor Day, we had 96 players registered for one tournament. We bought tape, we lined all the upper courts, we had 12 pickleball courts. It rained right before the tournament started. So all the tape came up, all the money, all the time that we spent taping it came up. So we had to take all the tape up. Luckily, 5 Seasons offered us their indoor space to move it because now that the tape was up, we didn't have time to reline them. But we were able to fill 12 courts in the morning and the afternoon. We had a beginner and an advanced tournament. And it was really well received, and I think it could be a really big success.
So for tournaments, yes, but for the majority of the time, how many do you think would
So
work?
before COVID, when I was in my position, I held pickleball, but since tennis was Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, we could only do pickleball on Mondays and Wednesdays in the evening. And those leagues filled up, but we only had 2 courts at the time, so I don't know the potential because I had to turn people away.
Yeah, I'm a part of a pickleball, Fort Thomas pickleball chat room, and I think there's like 200 people in there.
There's a
Well,
lot.
and I think that a lot of the reservation when it comes to pickleball is because it's perceived as such a new sport. But, I mean, the city's been on board with pickleball since, I mean, when I started, I think that we introduced it at camp in 2015. So it's been around for a while, but if the concern is taking tennis courts away and making them pickleball courts, then just don't take any of the space away, and if pickleball goes away in 5-10 years, that needs resurfaced, that will need resurfaced anyway, so just turn them back into tennis, or whatever is up and growing at the time. I feel like 6 pickleball courts down there will be full every single night, with a waiting list.
Will we need more? I think that's part of the question.
I think we start with 6 and utilize the space that we already have, and we know works, and then if Carlisle gets up and running within the next few years and pickleball's taken off even more, then we put more up there and we can turn those into futsal courts or back to tennis or whatever we need.
That's all good. That's
Did you
good.
say it was only,
Don't bring that into the,
did you say it was only $3,000 to permanently stripe all 6 courts? Is that?
yes.
For the lower level, yes.
to add striping to what we currently have. It wouldn't be eliminating, repainting, it would be adding striping for 6 courts, maintaining the tennis courts.
So there will be 3 sets of lines. There will be the tennis, the 2 pickleball, and then the 6 pickleball. But then you would still have to bring out the portable courts all the time. And then it's kind of like a toss-up, are they tennis courts, are they pickleball courts, who gets first dibs on them?
I like the idea of permanently lining those pickleball courts and 6 courts. I think those were not redone at the last, when the upper tennis courts were done?
They were.
They were.
They were done, okay, I thought they weren't. So, and then they just painted them and relining them permanently. I mean, this is not going away, you know what I mean? So I think it's a great test run, you know, I mean, to see how much use it gets.
And we keep documentation of every single tournament that we have and, I mean, how many players we have, so.
Is that helpful? I mean, so you still have to bring out the nets and everything, but the striping and things like that and the weather, how it can impact it, it would be somewhat helpful to have them permanently striped?
It would.
Less laborious to set the whole thing up?
Yeah,
Even though you
so
still
right
have to do
now there
nets.
are, well, if we strike them permanently with only pickleball, then we would be able to just roll out the nets, or we can leave them set up. Whereas now, there's only 2 courts down there, and we have to tape the other 4. And then, well, we have to tape all 6, and then, I mean, like Katie said, if it rains, it just,
Besides the tournaments that the high school has, what is used on those lower lots?
pickleball.
Okay.
They
And we
don't
can get
have-
Bad
6,
tennis players.
we can get 6 full courts if we temporary, or 6 full courts if we designate.
Correct.
On the lower area.
And
Is that what you're
is
saying?
there
Yes.
any opportunity on the lower to, because there's a lot of green around there,
No.
right? Is there any opportunity to, not, well, painted green?
Oh,
Yeah,
well, that's utilizing the entire 2 bottom courts.
okay, all right. And we couldn't come closer to the upper, put a wall and flatten that area out? We couldn't go further down the hill, because Andy was pointing out that the topography is not awful, with a little manipulation of earth?
Well, there's a trail that goes, that's the pumpkin walk,
Yeah,
historically, it's the pumpkin walk trail. But, that would be I feel like a lot of earth moving. We had talked about years and years ago of filling all of that in and bringing it up to the same level, but, I mean, that's just, like we just said, the retaining wall, and then you're talking about.
That area used to have
flipping
a building on it. That was part of the old fort that, where,
well,
someday building.
could we consider this in stages and consider lower, and then again, this is just brainstorming. We could permanently strike the lower, designating that as a pickleball area with stage 1, stage 2, filling in somewhere around it to, if we need to, we can expand it, expand the courts, because it would just be taking down a fence.
I mean, we'd have to look a little bit more closely. I don't know that like the mayor said, I think we kind of stopped that exercise. That was actually more over on the side. I'd have to do some more, more research, how much how much area we have. Is it going to benefit us? How many more courts could we get out of it? Just cost analysis.
Yeah.
I
And
think we'd have to put more into that.
there was discussion at some point of and I think we're gonna talk about it, the tennis court practice wall, about taking that down and putting a designated pickleball court there, which, if this is a temporary court, the lowers are temporary courts, it doesn't make sense to do that, but if we designate it and that is our pickleball area, then it kind of does make sense to do that, and maybe move that practice wall somewhere else.
How many courts could you get in there?
I have no idea.
I think there was a design, if I'm not mistaken, 2, but don't hold me to that. I vaguely remember that we were, like the mayor said, we were going to consider that, and there's a design somewhere. I didn't bring it with me, but I vaguely remember there might have been two lengthwise.
Is there an option to move the practice wall somewhere else, close by?
The practice wall is not even in use.
Because the asphalt in front of it is in such bad shape. So the
There's
idea was
feedback.
to use that section for a pickleball court. We did look at expanding from the lower 2 courts towards the upper 4 courts and going in the other direction, and neither one of those engineering-wise was going to work.
Okay.
We were getting into the easement area on the downhill side, and so part of the issue was coming up with this other thing. And again, we abandoned the whole thing when the Carlisle Park came around. And I understand what you're saying, Matt, 3 to 5 years. I think we could move a little bit faster on it, and I would like to also look at the potential in Carlisle Park of leaving room and planning for the potential expansion. If we plan for 6 courts and we put 6 courts there, let's plan that we can go in this direction or go in that direction and maybe add more courts if it truly becomes more and more popular when we need more. because there is so much space there, and it's, you know. it's a
Carlisle
great
Park to me
location.
makes the most sense, but the timing of it was not necessarily ideal.
Yeah, and now that Newport is done with that section, everything was on hold because of that. Now that they're done with that section, I think we're free to move on with handling the other. There's one area of drainage that needs just repaired, which is not a big deal. But that other area that needs to be engineered about how to get that water across the
Is
hillside.
Newport pitching in on the park? I know we own 2 sections, so is this gonna be like I'm just curious, a combination of Newport for Thomas Park, so it'll be.
A little bit, there's not much of it that is usable on the Newport side, but yeah, we will coordinate with them, especially on the entrance and exit, depending on whether it goes directly across the bottom of Stardust or whether it goes out where kind of the entrance is now. And that has to be coordinated with the state as well as determine where they want that cut. based on.
The downside of putting it there is that's a location that's gonna draw a lot of people from not Fort Thomas.
Correct.
Well, and the other way to look at it, which is important as far as our discussion about all parks in the city, is that Carlisle Park will not be really isn't a walkable park. It's not like kids can walk there and get there. It's gonna be a drive-to park for most people. There is a sidewalk along Memorial, and some people may be able to walk there, especially if you're walking your dog or something else. But chances are it's gonna be a lot of traffic to get there. And that's why pickleball was a logical choice and dog park was a logical choice, because it's mainly a drive-to facility and less of a children's kind of park.
Can that be done in stages? If we put pickleball, if that is where we decide to designate pickleball, can we do 2 courts, work our way towards the work being done? Or is it all one big pad, or are they separate pads, or I don't know how.
So are you talking about doing a couple pickleball courts and then adding pickleball courts later?
Yeah.
I mean, you probably could, but if we have all the equipment there, people are gonna bid out, and they're gonna want the job more for 4 or for 6 as opposed to 2. But I think if you have everything there, I don't see a big difference between 2 and 6, and you may
Yeah, I would
disagree.
start at 6. I think 6 feels like a good pad, a good number, and then you debate whether you expand upon that, whether it's go to 12 or stay at 6.
I'm just trying to figure out if we move that timeline up, if we do less courts now, and like shorter term, while the rest of this area is getting fixed, can we put those courts in there, get them used, get them utilized, and then knowing that we're gonna do another phase 2 of expanding at some point when this area gets fixed?
I would say, based on my conversation with the guys out there, we really can't do anything there until we get the 2
Okay.
drainage ditches and then the access, the
That
road.
road's all ready to go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it's ready.
Timing isn't ideal, so what I'm thinking is, that's not ideal, and this isn't, permanently striping this isn't ideal necessarily, but is it a reasonable solution, kind of bridge to, even if it's 2 or 3 years out, that we can get those, faster than a 3 to 5. If the school agrees that it's not that big of a deal for the tennis team, is that a reasonable solution?
To do,
Well, not ideal,
you're
but-
taking, to not have tennis courts on a low level and make it all pickleball, is that what you're saying?
Well, no, maybe I'm not permanently striping all those for pickleball.
Yeah, the schools will be fine with us painting them. It's what they've showed concern is taking down the tennis courts down there and using it just as a permanent pickleball.
They'd have to have roller nets.
So we're talking about just the lower 2 courts can be
Correct.
made into 6 pickleball courts, not striping all the tennis courts.
Yeah, we're just talking striping, the $3,000 is to stripe the lower 2
Just,
as,
what does it cost us paint and stripe?
$3,700-ish.
And this still leaves
To
a tennis
do,
court.
to do the lower, it's $3,700 to do,
To add another set of lines to the 2 lower tennis ball courts, to make them 6 pickleball courts,
Do we need nets?
what about removing,
we have nets, city bought from.
what if we, my question is if we repaint and stripe permanent for pickleball, designated pickleball, how much does it cost to repaint stripe back to tennis at some point?
It would be another.
Probably 15,000. No, so 15,000 to take away, restripe, and do permanent pickleball, only pickleball on the lower courts is 15,000. So to probably go back and repaint and do that again, it's probably another 15,000.
But if you just wanted to add, like, if we completely take tennis away, put 6 pickleball courts, that's 15 grand, and another however many years, if you wanna add tennis courts back and just reline it, then it'd be another, what, $4,700 or whatever it is.
It might be a little more because it's like, because of the painting, the amount of painting with the tennis courts. But- What's that?
Holes, filling holes.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it too.
So is that a good bridge solution, given the issues at Carlisle?
Can you put the Carlisle back up there?
Very straight, or-
If pickleball's too loud for Highland Park, could you put tennis back in there, and how many could you get?
Yeah, I don't know. And I'm not saying it is too loud, but I am definitely concerned about that area.
So are those pickleball courts facing, are they north, south, or east, west?
I think it'll be probably diagonal. It's probably northwest,
Is
southeast.
there an optimal direction
Yeah, there is concern
with the sun?
with the sun.
'Cause right there especially, the sun will be setting on and shining right on those courts.
I mean, I think you could adjust those.
Yeah, but I think that left picture is not center north.
We could have Bear Hospital, the addition on the roof.
The one on the right is center north. So I think that, Andy, I think that picture on the left needs to be turned. Yeah.
The sun sets about where the old city logo is up there.
Wrigley Field.
And again, those are things we can consider once we're actually looking deeper into Carlisle.
Can you repeat again what it was that you said about the lower tennis courts, so that eliminates them from being able to hold tournaments? Is that what you said?
They wouldn't, I mean, I'm not saying that they can't hold tournaments, but it would be much longer tournament because you'd only have 4
Oh, so
courts
there's
instead of
still
6.
4 is all they need, so they'd just be longer.
Well, I mean, I guess they could do it with 2, but it would be much, much longer, you know what I
I
mean?
didn't know if it was a required amount of tennis courts they would have to have, that's what I meant.
I'm sure there's no requirement. It's just, when they have 6 courts, obviously, when you have so many teams, you can get through them a lot quicker. So it'll take them, a third as long, I guess.
Do we host a lot of tournaments?
I think 3 to 4 is what
It's not a lot.
the high school. No, it's not a lot.
I don't know if that's compared to other schools and what they
Yeah, I don't.
host, or what their availability is either.
So,
What is the committee thinking they would like to see where a permanent landing spot for pickleball would be? Let's start there. From discussion that we had, what is your opinion or thought? Facebook?
Just so you guys know, I just talked to my buddies in Cold Springs, they're opening the bids for their pickleball courts tomorrow. So I can either get that, or if you will reach out to Angela there.
Okay.
That would give you a number on what it would cost for that many courts. I think that's a great start, and we don't have to worry about it. So,
yeah.
Can we also look into getting a better idea on the timeline of Carlisle?
Yes, I'm at the mercy right now of the state to try to get with them on moving forward on it, so.
Ultimately, knowing that we're at least 2 years out on Carlisle, minimum, I would say, at least
I
1.5
think
to 2 years. With all the factors, where would you like to see it land? Permanent pickleball courts land?
I think Carlisle makes a lot of sense.
Carlisle? That's what I'm thinking too.
I had surface concerns, but it doesn't sound like that.
Yeah.
That's
Eric, can
not
you talk
an
in the
issue.
microphone? I
Sorry.
can't hear. I am so sorry. Thank you.
Yep.
I do.
So my main concern there was with the surface
Yeah.
issues. And if that's not, from the engineers, if that's not an issue, then I think that's probably the best spot.
What about the draw, the proximity of not necessarily being, it's gonna be a draw. I mean, have you ever gone up by Sawyer Point? They have
96 people showed up. That's a main artery. It's a
Yeah.
one tournament.
They have a lot of I don't know how many courts they have a lot of courts down there, and apparently every Saturday and Sunday morning, you have to wait, you have to put some kind of stick somewhere, or your paddle somewhere, and wait in line. And being on Memorial Parkway, that close to 471, that close to downtown, I think we're gonna run into that, where we might avoid that somewhere else.
I think that if I were a pickleball person, I would drive another 5 minutes to go there. Because you're gonna drive to wherever you're gonna go. If you're in Cincinnati, you're gonna drive another 2 minutes to get to Highland Park, to get to here to get to anywhere.
So you don't need a banner?
No, I don't think
think
it
we-
really.
I don't think
Okay.
it matters.
All right,
And you
all right.
go where your friends play too, so, and a lot of the pickleball people that play in Fort Thomas, they just kind of rotate, so Monday they go here, Tuesday they go there, and that's how they're so well versed on what everybody else has.
Yeah.
The more of them are opening up to, Cold Springs is doing, this is gonna lessen the pressure a little bit, or maybe grow it.
Where would you like to see them, Kat?
I think Carlisle Park is a good idea, but that is a 2-year problem, and we have a pickleball problem now.
Yeah.
So if we, I mean, in 2, 3, 4 years, whatever, those are gonna need to be resurfaced anyway. So I feel like putting 6 courts permanently there now will fix a lot of the problems, good problems that we're having now.
It's a good bridge,
Yes.
in your opinion.
Yeah.
And again, and if, when Carlisle Park gets finished and pickleball is no longer a thing, then we'll figure something else out.
That's why I was asking what it costs to repaint them. 'cause
Are
if
you
it's-
suggesting the $3,700
No.
method
she-
to the $15,000?
The 15,000, that's a permanent pickleball only down there.
Is it blacktop? Is that the surface?
Yeah, it does have like the paint has a little different, like kind of sandish feel in it. It's the same surface as a tennis surface.
It's not another layer of asphalt.
Yeah.
It's more of essentially a paint.
What I'm wondering, is there a parking area that can be striped 2 ways?
For cars and for pickleball?
Yeah.
Parking is such an issue in the city. That's gonna be,
Well, then you'll
I like
have,
the idea.
Yeah, and
Like behind the mess hall. Like in between the mess hall and the softball fields. If there's.
Yeah, and we would have to-
Right now.
we
can that
we
be
can't just
striped?
stripe it, we'd have to curb it to keep cars from off of it and things like that. I mean, there's a lot more safety aspects that we would have to consider.
It's a good idea, though.
To doing
Thinking outside the box,
Yeah,
For
yeah.
sure.
So
We need to encourage badminton, and we can be anywhere.
That's what we pray.
I like the idea
Lawn
of
darts.
Carlisle permanent home, and that's why I was asking about the cost, to go ahead and do this, because then we'll get a feel, right? And then in 2 years, we can reevaluate if it's gonna go to Carlisle, or do we try to expand this, or do we move the practice wall, which we're gonna talk about?
I mean, if you're not gonna put them in Highland Park, where what do we have? Permanent, you're talking,
Either here or Carlisle.
that's what I'm saying, so there's some talk about Carlisle, if that's the best spot. I'm saying yes, because if we're not doing Highland, then what other options do we have?
Yeah.
Realistically, to
I
put
think
6
there's one in
courts.
Rossford, too, in there,
That's the
flat
question.
area in Rossford.
I mean, you couldn't put more than a couple courts there.
no.
Is that- I don't know, just-
I call it the basketball field, the small
Yeah,
little
yeah.
where soccer. Yeah, I don't think that we can sacrifice.
That field's used for all kinds of.
I really think Jeff was talking about Memorial Parkway, that's an artery. Katie talked about 96 people showing up one day to play pickleball, and that was.
Well, that was a committed tournament too, I think.
I know, but I mean, the more you put them there, the more access you have from Newport. I mean, it's an artery, 96 people, 40 cars. I mean, how much park are we gonna have there? And that's only one, I mean, they might start doing more tournaments and more things there. I mean, it's just, I would be concerned, that's a main artery for Clover Ridge, for Riverside, for Highlands, for all our games. People going out of Mayor Hosser Street, it's dangerous. I mean, that's, people looking both ways. It just, I would be concerned about drawing too much traffic to that park.
Okay, let's get back to this location. I know you want to just make them permanent, right? The 15,000 permanent,
If the
take down
school-
tennis.
Pending the school's blessing, basically, yeah.
They're not gonna give us a blessing. I mean, I've talked to them and I started off telling them it's gonna happen, we're taking them away, just to feel the feedback, right? And yeah, so obviously the coaches aren't thrilled with that, but I didn't get any pitchforks or, threats to burning my office down. So I think they will work with it. I mean, they understand they're on our space and they're happy that they've gotten to use it at this point. So I don't think it'll be anything in that aspect. It will be mostly affecting their tournaments.
Yeah,
Which is 3 to 40.
and that would be my preference there,
The 15,000 permanent,
yeah.
not multi-use, okay? And you were same and Andy,
I agree with that.
okay?
How many tennis courts were at Highland a long time ago?
I think there were 3. Yeah, 3.
Now,
Those got taken away a long time ago.
Yeah.
When I
Yeah.
started, they were sand volleyball.
Is it sand volleyball before tennis? I couldn't remember. which was
is
first.
pickleball louder than tennis?
Tennis for, I
Oh,
thought
yeah.
tan.
So
Yeah, because, I mean, the tennis balls and the paddles on pickleball and the ball itself are hard, and it just makes that
Makes sense. Aluminum too, I think.
that noise. And tennis, it's the softer balls, they're quieter and with the strings.
all of that pickleball and putting tennis back where it was a long time ago. Be closer to the high schools.
I don't know if you'd have enough space down there, but it's
You could do
it's
that,
possible.
You could put two in, that gets the overflow problem. You could run a tournament and say, hey, run this one, and,
Be across town,
yeah, it wouldn't be ideal, I get it.
yeah.
Tennis already failed there.
And that's okay. I think I've got enough now that we'll go ahead with the 15,000. I'll let the school know we're gonna convert them. I think maybe I cut you off, Andy. Is that where you're leaning
I
to?
was just, just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Maybe a key point for them is that this is a temporary solution, right? Is that? mean,
I don't wanna tell them that because we're
I mean, if you
removing
get-
the actual
If
poles.
they come with the pitchforks.
Oh, right. Oh, I'll just blame this committee and I'm fine with that.
It is on record, I said with the school's blessing.
Yeah, I heard you, that's why I told you they're not gonna bless it there. So, okay, we'll move forward with that then.
And what's the timeline on, well, obviously we have to approve it because we're spending money, but what's the?
Right, it'll be in this next budget most likely. I think with the smaller, the 3,000, I could probably have swung possibly in this budget, but we'll definitely have to include that in the,
Post-July?
yeah,
Are you talking permanent, though, 15,000, not 3,000? right?
yes, 15,000.
Would that fall into Parks, could we get that out of Parks' current budget?
I don't know, I will always check that, because I mean, we're coming towards the end of the fiscal year. If there's money left over that you guys have already approved that we can utilize it for, we will.
Yeah.
But if not, then it'll just be incled, so
I think
I'll give you an update on
There was
it.
a lot of money approved for the splash pad, so there should be some.
It was not,
There wasn't? I thought
no,
it was.
that was not in the budget. If that was in the budget, yeah, well, okay, that's not in the budget, but I'll let, if we do it before the budget, next budget year, you'll know because next month we'll be talking about the budget anyway.
I think that's with everything that's been happening around pickleball everywhere, I hope that makes the majority, not everybody, but the majority happy, because we're listening and we're accommodating. And then with Carlisle being an option for later, then we can always expand.
Correct. Okay.
And I don't think it's going anywhere.
That's fine.
Pickleball.
I mean, you got LeBron James investing in it, you got Tom Brady, you got, I mean, it's
Well, his investment's
She
not very
knows, you
good.
guys know more than anybody. It's-
Bitcoin.
gangbusters.
Okay, so Highland Hills, we're just gonna talk about this real quick. Obviously, down here, we've got the parking lot right now. The parking lot, we're gonna expand as previously discussed. They should be finishing their final grading this week. The right side of this will be a practice field for soccer. And we're gonna try to move the skate park down here temporarily just to see how it does.
That was part of the original discussion.
That was a part of the original plan to move that. That is gonna give us a really good idea, and, you know, when we talk about pickleball down here as a possibility, if nothing else, that skate park will give us a good idea. If we start getting noise complaints, then we know we're gonna have an issue with that, and we might not, so,
Is the skate park gonna be the same metal?
yes. Yeah, we could, because we've got the movable ones now. And once we take a look at that, you know, in the future discussion will be, where do we put a permanent one if we want to do it at all?
I think,
Because the permanent ones, the concrete ones aren't gonna be loud like the metal. The metal are loud because they're temporary and because it's metal, so.
Is there anything on the back of that metal surface, any kind of downgrading material?
Well, so when we started this, however many months ago, I had Public Works take all the metal panels off, put rubber grommets on everything, because I went down there and did a thorough investigation of hitting it with my fist, and it sounds like a dumpster being loaded every single time. So the goal, you know, Public Works went out, bought huge rubber grommets, they took all the panels off, put them all back with rubber grommets, it did nothing. And then we decided, after, you know, begging them not to kill me, and take all the bolts off again and remove the metal panels completely, which, you know, when they were hitting it, it was hitting not only that metal, but that metal, so they were clanging, so we were hoping that was better. And it was better when it was removed. It looks worse because you can see all the guts of it, but it was a little bit quieter. It's still
What about
pretty loud.
spray foam in the back of the landing area with like a closed cell?
We talked to the developers, or the people that built to the manufacturer, and they were like, yeah, it's loud.
Okay.
I mean, there's.
But they didn't tell us that.
No, we told them about the grommet idea, and they're like, yeah, that should work. And, you know, it didn't, it cost Public Works a day or two to, cuss at me more.
I remember when I was first reading on the skate park, because this is, originally I wanted the skate park down here, because I like the central location, and kids on skateboards typically aren't driving.
Right.
Plus, I think you have a different element of skaters now than you did in the 80s and 90s, where the parents understand the respect you have to have for the parks. So less supervision is not as bad as it used to be, because it came with an element at times, you know?
Yeah.
And when I researched, it was quiet, but it was always concrete.
Right.
And I think this is a great alternative, you know what I mean? Because they were using it, obviously, if we're getting
Yeah.
noise complaints, right?
Yeah, they were using it, so I think, you know, at least the short term, that's the plan, is to move down here once we can get the expanded, because the current parking lot right now would just be enough of the safety needed for that with no parking. So we need to expand that to be able to do that. And then once we have that information, you know, we'll relocate the skate park, or probably we'll end up surplusing it probably, and then focusing on getting it permanent, because I don't know if there's any other locations that would really work as well. But that's the plan down here, for this end. The other thoughts are for future is maybe put a small play structure down here, kind of like we have down at Pendry by the soccer field. So when parents are down here and the kids are playing, that some of the kids, you know, the younger siblings or something, have a smaller thing to play on. So also this is a trailhead, you know, for the trails there, so that's another addition for the parking. So
Is
that's
it
the plan right now.
Bikes also on the trail or just
I
walking?
don't think that's a bike path.
It's not as common over there. I think Cora is generally here at Tower Park. I guess it could, but you don't hear a lot of people
Yeah.
biking over there.
Okay.
So any other additional stuff here, I think we'll know more in the next 6 to 12 months. Once we get this finalized, and once we get the skate park down there, we'll kind of be able to gauge more options in the future up there.
What's the square footage of the flat area?
I know you asked me that last time and I did not have it.
It's
I could do it
It's
real quick.
100 wide by 200 for the soccer field, and then the parking lot is approximately 100 by 100, and then the area where the splash park was going to go is approximately 100 by 100. So 100 by 600 approximately, or 100 by 400 approximately.
I noticed the majority of the cost to add turf is in the preparation piece. But if Highlands is thinking about redoing their soccer field, we could recycle that, reuse that surface. Is it worth investing that money down there? And I don't wanna call it just a soccer field down there, because I guarantee football's gonna use it, track's gonna use it, everybody's gonna use that area, so. Is it possible to look into the cost of what it would be to reuse that surface down in that area? It doesn't have to be the whole thing, just the practice field.
But isn't there a reason they're not using it?
Yeah, so they've had,
For our purposes, I think it would probably be fine.
we've discussed that. There is some interest in people using the current field, but that would be my hesitation is, I mean, it's a 20-year-old product. That's a lot of work to be putting it
I
back.
think it's for a practice field, I think it's probably gonna cost a lot. I think the under drains and everything associated with that, the base, it's not gonna be cheap, but we could
But, I mean,
come up with
the
a.
point is we will be discussing it, because I've talked to Brian at the school about if there's any opportunity we have for repurposing it in some other areas. So we'll definitely look into that.
Yeah, I know
Whether it's
the
here or
cost-
Riggs or another smaller park, maybe you.
The cost comes from
Right.
the prep
Yes.
part, and just
Yep.
creating that area it's so valuable to have flat practice area in the city, so.
Right.
And by adding turf, it just expands the usage stuff.
But we'll definitely factor that in. Above that field, we do have the older structures here that we're looking at replacing moving forward. It won't be in this budget, but our recommendation is going to be either next budget or the budget after We have had some concerns, and that is an older playground, and I think it's getting to the point where it would be good to update that. And then, we can look at possibly other options if this here works as a smaller splash pad, kind of what was at Tower Park, to put in this area and just have that. There's some other things that we can consider here moving forward, but again, I think we're a couple of years out from doing anything here unless the committee is wanting us to do something quicker.
I think there's a lot of requests for toddler equipment in town. I don't know, since we're buying a bunch of equipment for Tower Park, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to maybe add something if we can get something for the right price or move something, in Highland Park. Don't we get a lot of emails or requests for, there's nothing for like 0 to 3-year-olds or toddlers to do. You guys hear that ever?
Yeah, I think I would like to push for something anywhere in the park, Tower or here,
Or
that
both, so,
is inclusive, so there are some elements that everyone can use. 0 to 3 is connected to,
I think Griggs Park would be another area that, you have one of the kids moving into the neighborhoods, but we'd get more and more requests.
What would you recommend for here?
like equipment wise.
Yeah, what would be, if you could design this area, what would be your perfect play area?
There's not enough time in this meeting to.
High level. Cliff
Um,
notes.
I don't know off the top of my head. I personally don't like that the play equipment is on the opposite side of the road. I think that is a lot of the concerns that I get called about.
It used to not be.
I know, that's what I thought, I forgot about this.
Parking is on that side, right?
There's some parking on both sides, yeah, but if you're at the shelter and your kid wants to go, you have to run
And the
across.
bathrooms are on that other side too, stuff like that.
No shade over there either.
Well, we could look at the potential for the splash pad there, or back where it originally was intended, and then swap the two, and put a new playground down where the splash pad was gonna be, and put the splash pad up here. It's another option as well.
I think if we're gonna talk splash pad again in that area, we might wanna redo the comprehensive plan and get the community involved again for that area. I mean, Mayfield is not gonna want that.
And
All right,
that's,
so-
that's in the comprehensive plan, that's where they didn't want to have it. I mean, that was a high priority in the comprehensive plan, to have a splash pad in Highland Park.
And you have
Is
your
that on
water
the agenda?
bathroom there.
So so for the committee, are you guys good with us looking at this in the next year or two out and us bringing some more options to you and to review it later? I just wanted to kind of bring it up to make sure there wasn't anybody that was like, we need to do it this budget year. If
I
that's
think
okay with everybody.
sooner would be better, because that stuff's in pretty bad shape.
Okay, so I'll try to, for this next budget year, I'd like to try to get through the planning then, and then that'll be kind of our direction, is get through the planning and have it ready for the following, or if we can do it mid-year or something,
Yeah.
ready for next spring.
Yeah, I don't wanna rush, we don't wanna rush it, but sooner the better, I would.
Okay,
Can
Good
we
enough.
take it out and put green space for this year? Because that equipment, that's the equipment that I get, that and Tower Park is the equipment that I get the calls on the most.
Yeah,
All those
it's in
days.
pretty bad shape.
So can we just take it out?
we can take a look at that, just see, is that an option?
Is there anything in there that might still be worth leaving? I mean, you have no other playground equipment then up there, right?
The
Right.
Gaga, they play Gaga.
Yeah. Maybe it's looking at what's there and saying,
Yeah,
okay, this
what we
one,
can,
what you get the most complaints out, let's take this piece out and leave the slide or whatever, something for the
yeah.
kids to play in.
Okay. And the other area we have is back here by the dog park. I just wanted to bring that up in case we have any other topics, and then
We need a new dog park. That one's pretty,
Yeah.
that's pretty rough.
all right, the other part of Highlands Park, Highlands Park is the statue. I'm not sure if Eric and Andy, if you're familiar with this statue that we have. This was something that came up around 2016 that the city got donated to us. It's from Mike's, is it Scope? Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
Michael Scope, who's an architect, or I'm sorry, who is an artist, used to live on Hawthorne, and his wife helped the city get this, and we have it now finally in our possession. It was stored by Hosea for a long time, and recently we've got it. The plan was to put it down here at the end of this trail just to let council know, so we're gonna be moving forward to trying to get that set up so we can bring that to the end here. It's just, it'll be off the road to where you can kind of take the trail to see it, but I just kind of wanted to bring everybody up to speed that we are working on getting that taken care of, so.
Who is it?
I'm sorry?
Who is it?
It represents a pioneer family, kind of migrating across the United States.
Yeah, we structurally had some issues on the stand there, that was recently fixed. We had a welder take care of that Ken Bowman helped out, getting through to, the original estimate was really expensive, and he got some deals, and it only cost a few $100s. So that, now it's structurally sound that we can actually put it up. Okay, the next item on the agenda is Riggs Park. This is another one that we've talked about, and the goal from staff is to talk about this during next budget year and get something prepared to bring to hopefully in the next year or 2 years, depending on what the committee wants. Again, we talked about this previously, but I got a couple, or I guess one email this week with concerns on this. We're not looking to put a basketball park, we're not looking to have anything other than a pocket park, and the things that we would be utilizing here are replacing existing structures for the same like items. So it's not gonna be anything extravagant, we're not talking about putting a spray ground or anything like that here. Due to the parking issues, it's surrounded by 3 or 4 streets, so it's not something we wanna draw people to, but it is a really nice neighborhood park, and now that SD1's completed all their work in it, it's time to take a look at updating the equipment. So that was the only real updates, unless anybody had any
And
questions.
trees, we're gonna have.
Yes, we've already, the one tree that was brought up at the last, or in that email, I can't remember if it was email or the council meeting, but yes, we're looking at that one as well.
Can any of that equipment be used elsewhere, or is that at the end of its life also?
I think it's at the end of it.
I'd have to look at it. I know Tim has replaced the swings.
Just recently too.
It's structurally
The
sound.
swings themselves are okay, but I think, do we need to replace the structure around the swings? And then the second structure, play area, is probably pretty dated there, but I don't know precisely.
Can we repurpose some of that? We talked about this briefly. I know you were gonna look at some of the equipment at Tower Park. Maybe when that's redone, we can repurpose a few things there to give them some additional stuff.
The problem
I
with
don't
the
know about there.
I'm sorry. The
No,
problem with the repurposing is we can't find parts for it. And, when you talk about playground safety, we have 2 certified playground safety personnel in our, and it's the end of its lifespan, and that's why we're redoing it. And there's not a lot you can do with
You don't have to
it
explain
from a
it.
safety.
It was a thought, someone brought that up to me.
The one thing that is different that I've utilized in the last couple of years, and I don't know if I'd say it was a trend, but I saw it once and I thought it was a good idea, is to actually surplus some of this and to see if there's other cities that would be interested in coming to get some of the old stuff. Yes, it's not to our level and there are certain pieces, but it might be good for a city that can't afford a big redo, but still be able to.
Or they can use the parts because you're missing parts.
Right, yeah, so that's something that we'll
Could it
be
be
looking.
auctioned for the public too?
Yeah, so it would be an electronic auction, and then, because I had looked at another city that had some pretty newer stuff that we were considering in my last job, so just something to bring up that we will be looking into that as opposed to just tearing it down and throwing it away. I think we've talked enough about Carlisle, understanding that right now the focus is working with the state, getting the drainage fixed, and at that point we can do a thorough analysis of the stability of the area and then kind of present some other options. I think we've talked enough about the splash or the skate park as well. The plan is to put it down at Highland Park. We'll see how the noise works down there, and then moving forward, we'll probably be looking to surplus this as well. Selling it to another city or another area that's interested in it, and then start looking more at a permanent structure like originally planned.
This might be a terrible idea, but what about putting pickleball courts lined up there? I know that the noise would be an issue, but would they be okay with that? It's gonna be less noise than that.
I think we need to wait till the soccer field.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be less noise or not, but I mean, it is a good idea if it wasn't for the noise of it.
Yeah,
But-
and at that point with time making adjustments there, we might not want to mess with that area too much.
Well, I mean, the other thing we can do is,
When they do make the adjustments, we can evaluate it then, and see exactly what their plans.
we can remove, once we do remove this, Katie, maybe we can go put a net down there and play and just see how loud it truly is, and talk to Carrie who lives there, and just, I mean, that'd be a good idea. One of us get down on her patio and kind of listen while we play it, so I mean, that is it's a good idea. So, all right, we talked about the tennis practice wall. The plan was Public Works was gonna try to work this in to get it up and running. Is that okay for the committee to do that? Or would you rather try to go down the road of adding a pickleball? I think with the easement and the wall and everything else, I don't know, I think it's probably better for us to try to put it back to a tennis wall, but
Was it used when it was used? I know we talked about this a little bit.
I've gotten some feedback from people in the community about the wall, and I mentioned that to you. I just basically, feedback was, hey, we're gonna have these discussions, and we're not gonna do anything until we figure out a plan. But if we're not gonna use it, then my question would be, could we put that surface down there? The feedback was, hey, I can go up there and, let my kid hit around if I'm playing, or, use some practice time with them, or warm up and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know how much it was used, but there has
Yeah.
been some feedback.
I'm surprised the amount of feedback I've received. I mean, granted, it's only been 3 to 5, but you kind of add that to other people. I was pretty surprised that they had. I mean, I used it as a kid myself, but I think it's worth.
The wall was pretty
The
good.
wall's fine. The issue was, we actually tried to pave it when we redid the basketball courts, but there was just nothing there. There was no substructure for our contractor to build upon. So really, the only option is to put a base in there and put a concrete pad. And that's something that I think we can do. It's, a little weather dependent, because it's where it's at, physically at. But it wasn't as simple as slapping some asphalt on there. It's gonna take a little
I
more.
understand that the access to back there was the problem.
Right, it's not an easy
They-
spot
you can't
to
get
do
there-
anything.
Yeah, you can't get there with the equipment for the asphalt, and that's why it degraded over all the years, is we couldn't get to it. I mean, when it was originally built before the fence went up, and then the fence went up, and I think Ron told me that his recollection was it had not been resurfaced since the originally put
It
in.
probably wasn't.
And the fence went up, and because you can't get to it with the equipment. You'd have to take the fence down to do it, but I don't know if that's still the case or not.
It's just difficult to get to. We would have to go back with a Bobcat, fill with concrete, and just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, which, we can do. It's time consuming, and it's not a simple project, like replacing a concrete slab at the top of the amphitheater. That was easy.
So is it that important that we need to do that?
Or I can't mentally going around the tennis courts, I don't have a great visual, but is there another place to put it if it's not prohibitively expensive? I don't know.
I mean, I think if we're gonna do it, we do it here, because it already has the wall there, and we've kind of have the area. So, like I said, Public Works is ready to fit this into their schedule when they have the time, if the committee is good with us moving forward with
The
that.
wall hasn't shifted, that shows a lot of stability there, I think, 'cause I think it's just a block wall, right, that's been painted over. So that would shift more than anything, I would think, so.
How far can a concrete pumper truck reach?
Kat mentioned that yesterday, and we didn't get a chance to really.
I mean, the problem is getting the truck with the pumper anywhere close, because, they'd have to park probably up by the shelter, and that's pretty far of a pump. But that's something the Public Works will obviously look at.
So I would recommend looking into fixing it, but if it can't be done easily, then scrap the.
Yep. That was our same view of it. I just want to make sure it was okay that if it was reasonable that we could get it done, to go ahead and replace it.
How many bags of saccharin can we carry?
Well, they have, like, the bucket, you can fit 2-3 yards of concrete in.
Yeah, I think it's definitely doable for our Public Works.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that that's okay with us moving forward, that you didn't have any issues with that.
And there's nothing else we could do there besides the potential of a pickleball.
With enough money, we can do anything, obviously, but I think it's reasonable to keep it what it is right now, with all our other options.
I would be worried about building a retention wall and then settling over time back there as well, too.
Okay, and then the final thing we're gonna discuss is just a quick update on the trail system. There's been a lot of work especially with identifying trails to allow fire department, PD to get to certain locations and be able to identify where people are at when we have issues. And then, right now that the branding is complete, we're gonna start working on the trailheads for all the trailheads in Highland Park and Tower Park to be able to have actual people know that it's not just a path into the woods. This is a trailhead of whichever trail it is. And then the trail markings throughout, again, that's gonna help PD and fire find people that need help. And then moving forward in that direction. Now that we've have it mapped out real well, we've been working with all of our local organizations for this, but just kind of wanted to let everybody know that that's the direction we're moving. I believe we'll be able to fit it into this year's budget. If not, it'll just be included in any kind of overage into next year's budget.
There was I met with some of the guys, we have a great volunteer system that builds these trailheads, or trails, especially Highland Park too. I know there was, when I spoke with them, they would just like some kind of shelter, something up there to store their equipment, because they're storing the stuff they use at that park to build, so I think, you know, you guys, your committee.
Who is this? Because they do have.
I'll email you some of the
Okay.
guys' names.
Because we do have
stuff like that.
storage for some of them.
Okay, cool, yeah,
But
because they just were all piecemeal together, and they have to meet
You
up.
put it right there behind the stables building.
We have a lot of storage in the museum basement we use for
Oh,
other
there you go.
Yeah, that's right.
other groups, so I'm surprised that any of them have
Yeah, no
issues
one
with
mentioned that, and
Okay.
you're right, they do have stuff down there, I'll put you in contact with them.
So, and then once we get, things moving on here, we'll give you an update to let you know when it's being installed and everything.
Bocce courts, there was a request for a bocce ball court, and I know that originally they were supposed to be bocce ball courts where shelter 3 is, where the cornhole was. I think someone donated those cornhole boards, so I think when
Yeah, I haven't heard.
somebody emailed us, maybe I'll just forward it to you. I know originally the plan, I don't know what the costs are, but I just think it's something to consider if we review it.
Any other things? I cover everything,
No, I'm very pleased with the progress from this meeting, and especially around the pickleball piece, because that seems to be the hottest topic, the most people interested in.
Yep, absolutely.
And the Hero Park being, I'm excited for that, it's gonna be fantastic,
It'll be awesome.
yeah.
All right.
Have they indicated how long the Hero Park remodel will take?
It should be up by spring, summer of next year, correct? I thought
Honestly, I
they,
don't remember off the top of my head. the specific time.
I mean, that was the plan. I think they were planning on tear down, October, November this year and starting on that. So obviously we're getting through the construction, getting through bids to be able to get a better idea on that. But the goal was to have it out during the winter, but then ready for next season if possible. So.
Chad, is there anything your department needs from us that we can talk about that's not on the agenda that we can move to a different agenda?
Online registration?
Yes, online registration.
I don't think that's
I think that's a big one,
I don't think that's us, that's just you, right?
Yeah.
but I don't think anything.
Okay.
It was a great update for me.
We'll adjourn, you good?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Adjourn.
Nice job, Matt, thank you.
That was good.
I've done so many.
I think it's important that.